I find it amazing that the early analysis from the airline and military pilots was pretty wrong. I was one of the first to say that all the issues for the Air India incident happened on the runway. The start of the problem was on the runway. I was one of the first to state that on YouTube. Why was that the case? That's what we're talking about today. I've been thinking about this over the last 24 hours, so stick with me on this one. I've been thinking about this over the last 24 hours. How come the airline pilots, the captains and the military pilots were so far off the mark that they weren't able to see that the issues were starting on the runway, but I was? Well, it's a really interesting situation. The world of airline pilotry and military pilotry is full of standard operating procedures. You must do it this way, you must do it that way, you follow a checklist, you keep going, everything becomes perfect, and it has to be perfect to ensure the utmost safety, and that's a good thing. But when you're at that level, you never see when things go wrong. Now, with the flying that I have done in the past, I've seen lots of things go wrong. And, you know, we're not talking about veering away from a standard operating procedure. We're talking about flying using navigation like this, a slide rule, and doing things by the seat of your pants and flying VFR, visual flying rules, making sure that you understand where you are, making sure that the maps are accurate, making sure that the weather is correct so you can perform your calculations in line with your slide rule, and making sure that everything's right. You're sat waiting at airfields and airports constantly, and you're watching and observing other aircraft landing and taking off, and you are seeing mistakes on a daily basis, only small mistakes, but the accumulation of all this knowledge of seeing lots and lots of small mistakes allows you to take a look at a particular video of a scenario and stand up and say, in my case, the issue started on the runway. The pilots were having a problem on the 787 on the runway. They'd gone past the point of no return and had no option other than to take off. Well, they do have another option. Just go straight on. But I guess that wasn't an option at that moment in time. It's a terrible situation for the pilots and a terrible situation for the passengers. But the point here is, based on my experience and other pilots' experiences that must be shared, and I don't see them sharing their knowledge and analysis of the situation, that when you constantly follow standard operating procedures, you become cocooned in an ultra-controlled world where mistakes just don't really happen. And that's a good thing. That is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. Standard operating procedures are good. But then it allows you to see the perfection of everything. And then you don't have an extended experience of analysing something that's happening and seeing it in a different way. When you are observing mistakes on a regular basis, you can see where the problems start. And in this case, on the 787 Air India, the problem started on the runway, which is really sad. So I can understand why these military and airline pilots are now correcting themselves, certainly based on earlier observations of what happened in the flight from the start of the runway onwards. And that's a good thing. This is a good thing. I am not here to offer a solution as what happened. That's not the case. I'm not here to do that. What I'm saying is the issues of the flight started much earlier than the early analysis of which the airline and military pilots stated. I can hear an aeroplane flying over right now. When you are sat at an airfield or an airport waiting for your next slot, and let's understand it, pilotry is a waiting game. Generally speaking, you're waiting and waiting for a slot to occur, and then you know you've got a slot. Half an hour prior, you go to the aircraft, get the ready aircraft, do your check, etc., get it prepared, make sure your paperwork's in order, and then you take off. It's it is a waiting game. So by waiting, you can observe having a coffee, what other pilots are doing in their landings and takeoffs and circuits, etc. You do observe this, and it's that level of experience allowed me to stand up and say, the issue started on the runway. These two pilots were struggling. Now, I also was talking to one of my colleagues this morning, and I want to just tell you something that you've probably not thought about yet. Bear with me. There are two sides to the aeroplane. There is the front side where the pilots are flying the aircraft, and then there's the other side where the remaining staff and the passengers sit. At some point down that runway, the two pilots knew that something was going wrong, and they then knew that they knew that they had to take off, and they did take off. At some point through that journey of time, both pilots knew that they were on a jealous clock and that there was a 99% chance that they were going to die. As a scenario, how would you feel if you were sat next to me in a motor car, in a vehicle, automobile, whatever you want to call it, a car? We're driving down the road, and I turned round to you and said, I'm sorry, but we've got 40 seconds before we die. How would you feel? That's an incredibly terrible situation. And I feel so sorry for those two pilots, because they're at the front of the aircraft and they know what's going to happen. And the last seconds of their life are flashing in front of their face, in front of their eyes. You sit down right now and think, if I told you you'd got 40 seconds before you were going to die, or there was a 99% chance that you was going to die, what would you do? It must have been absolutely horrific for those two pilots to start that jealous clock ticking where they knew the end result wasn't going to be positive. If you think about it that way, that's a really, really interesting scenario. I was explaining this to one of my aviation colleagues this morning. We sat down and thought about it. And yes, both of us have had less than positive experiences at the time, but we never thought we were on the jealous clock where it started to tick and you were going down. We never really got to that point. We thought we might, but through good experience and flying by the seats of your pants and using things like this, visual flying rules, instrument flying rules, you get through it. You get through it and you learn from it. You do learn from it. Terrible situation. Terrible situation. I really do feel for the pilots and I feel for the passengers as well and the rest of the crew. I said in my earliest video that the problem started on the runway, not in the air. The RAT deployed virtually immediately, so something was wrong on the runway. Pure inertia and energy of the aircraft got it up to what I believe now is an altitude from ground, a ground level altitude of some 290 feet. I think they previously said that it was 425 feet, but that's been corrected to somewhere around 290, maybe 300 feet. It's a very sad situation. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. There'll be more content in the very, very near future on my further analysis on the big pictures of this Air India 787 incident. And as requested by lots of people in the comments, they would like me to share some of my and others' flying experiences and how we've learned to keep the shiny side up, shall we say. Terrible situation. As I say, don't forget to subscribe because there will be future content on good times and not so good times that we can all learn from. Gone are the days of using these things. Everybody uses an iPad. I can't understand how the world has changed from this, a physical thing, to an iPad that's got a 1-year guarantee that you buy from your local electronics store. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. However, I'm just an old fart. Stay safe. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe. Please give the video a like and comment below on what your thoughts are. How would you like the jealous clock? Stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.